what are you actually saying about our responsibility as a nation for the killing and the starvation in Gaza?
Well, first of all,
that we haven't noticed, because this is a conversation. This conversation doesn't play out on the media very much, but it's a conversation that happens, I think, a lot in Britain. To what extent are we to blame as well? And your book is all about that. So why do you think it's systematic rather than amounting to a few supportive comments?
Well, hang on. It's not supportive comments. I've mentioned the Cameron's defunding of UNRWA. I've mentioned the British arms going there, etc., etc. Look, if the massacres which took place in Gaza and are still taking place, even despite the ceasefire, had been carried out by Russia in Ukraine on this scale, or let's even think, we would have done the following things. We would have sanctioned when we do in Russia. We would, as we have done in Russia, we would have sanctioned Israel. I would have. There was a very strong case for a no-fly zone over Gaza, with those F-35s just bombing the place to smithereens and slaughtering people. That we would have set up a war crimes tribunal. These are all things. Now, you say it's because Israel is our ally that we shouldn't do them. I say one of the reasons we should do them is because Israel is our ally. We cannot become part of a lawless international system which uses mass murder as a weapon of war, starvation as a weapon of war. We can't do that. That isn't what we as a nation stand for. And I'm surprised, I'm quite shocked actually to hear a former British diplomat defend that kind of conduct.
So once again, I don't accept your premise in many of this. The idea that there is an established pattern of deliberate massacre of civilians, I simply reject it.
It's well documented by all of the human rights organisations, by the UN. This is a matter of we're now discussing.
Just let Edmund make his point.
Yeah, that would be nice. Yes, let's at least look at the company that we are in. We are not talking about just being in, some level of coordination with the United States, which is part of this. It's partly the British foreign policy over many years, of course, has been, partly about a close relationship with the United States. Now, that's just a fact of the matter. I'm sure you can make objections to it, and I wouldn't necessarily disagree with those objections, but that is a guiding principle that both of our political parties have accepted over decades. But it isn't just the United States. We're also very much in step with Germany on this. We're very much in step with Japan on this. We're very much in step with France on this. There is no international unanimity, certainly not in the West, against British policy on Gaza.
And yet all of these countries, their positions evolved over time, and particularly Britain's position.
As did ours.
And started saying, this is unacceptable, the level of killing is horrific, there's got to be a ceasefire. Eventually they got to calling for a ceasefire, even though they rejected the idea of calling for a ceasefire at the beginning. And yet, for all the allyship that you talk of, they were unable to affect any change in Israel's behavior at all.
The Economist estimates that between 4 to 5% of the population of Gaza has been killed. That's probably about 100,000 people. Others think it's more. If that was in Britain, that would be about 3 million of us.
So I don't accept that figure either.
You don't accept this figure, I know. There's a lot of facts which you find difficult to accept. You're in a state of denial. But
many people talk about between 60 and 70,000 casualties.
You're denying Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, the United Nations. You're in a small place, along with you, Mr. Netanyahu, perhaps Ben Gvir. One of the problems of the British government has been you have explained very well, very articulately, the British policy of not trying to offend the United States, of staying alongside our ally. But it's taken us in to a moral cesspit.
Let me just move us on to another part of your argument, Peter, which is why complicity in your framing has been acceptable in Britain, and the conversation that we've had around it, the way it's been framed, the way it's been reported in the media, and the way that we describe people and deaths on both sides. Why do you think it's been distorted and wrong?
I look at the conduct of the mainstream British media in the way that it's reported the events since October the 7th. And it's been shocking. I mean, the greater value attached to Israeli people who've been killed by Hamas, the Israelis, than the Palestinian.
Just explain why you think, how has that happened? You know, what are the examples, if you like?
The most desperate day of the war, 22 Israelis killed. Terrible. But, you know, the same day, something like 200 Palestinians were killed. There's a basic racism about Western reporting. An Israeli person who's been killed, it's a terrible tragedy. I'm all for it. Give them a name, give them a job, explain what they were doing. Palestinian person who gets killed, doesn't matter. Let's look at the treatment of Palestinian journalists. More than 200, I think, according to the latest numbers, have been killed, many of them targeted. What attention has been given to that in the Western media? Very, very little. The targeting of aid workers, you know, well over 300 UNRWA workers killed. Nobody notices.
All of these things have been reported, though, haven't they? I mean,
Not really.
They are part of the conversation. It's part of the protest movement. It's part of all the activist conversation.
The protest movement has been largely ignored, and it's been systematically smeared by the British media. I have a chapter on this, about how the fabricated stories published all over the mainstream media, making out that they're terrorist supporters or Hamas supporters or anti-Semites or violent thugs. These protesters who've been walking through British streets week after week, protesting simply in favour of international law. They've been they're on the same side as the United Nations, the International Criminal Court, the International Court of Justice, against war crimes.
But how do you think?